Hi.
Looks like we got a good crowd tonight.
Oh. All right, we're gonna get going. So if everybody could mute, what we'll do is um we'll let Tim run through his presentation. If you want to send me questions in the chat, you can do that, and we will ask them as we move along. Otherwise, at the end, we'll have time for questions.
All right, if we're ready to get started, then I think Matt's going to pull up the presentation, but
Yeah.
maybe as he's pulling that up, this is designed for new treasurers and maybe candidates that don't have a treasurer yet, or maybe might even serve as their own treasurer. But as any of us that have served as a treasurer in the past or are serving now, there's a lot to it. It's not just a matter of keeping track of money in and out. There's certain ways and compliance rules that are very important. And I think I was a treasurer for more than 9 years for the Boone County Dems, and I learned an awful lot during that time period. Would have been great if some of that that I had to learn the hard way over the years was presented earlier. So that's the purpose of tonight's meeting. Uh, Again, I'm Tim Anderson. I'm the treasurer for the 4th Congressional District Democratic Party, but we do have a treasurer's team. On the team is Peggy Apple, who has quite a bit of experience as a treasurer for a state representative campaign. Also, Teresa Shearer, who is the current treasurer for the Hendricks County Dems and has been for quite a while now. And then I served as the Boone County Democratic Party treasurer for 8 years. And currently I'm the treasurer for Veterans for Indiana, which is a PAC that works towards electing veterans to public office. And so this is something that the three of us try and work together in making sure that we're educating treasurers coming up. Also, I want if everyone can take a moment and write down my email address. It's down at the very bottom, treascd4@gmail.com. The reason I want to give that out is this presentation. Anybody that emails and requests it, I'll send this presentation to them. There is a lot of detail in this presentation. It's one of the reasons that we kind of, the first time we gave our treasurers, new treasurers seminar was, or training was this summer. And there was not as much detail in my slides. So I realized that that doesn't serve as a good resource if you don't have something to refer back to. So I do think that it would be helpful if after the meeting, just request me to send the slides, and I'll be glad to do that. I think Matt is also recording this, and so there is a video that you can also get. Maybe between the two, you can retain all the information that we're going to try and cover. So Matt, if you don't mind going to the next slide, we'll get started. Yeah, yeah, I want to stop on that one. I'm going to read a disclaimer because I think it's important. The information, and I'm going to read it. The information in this presentation is for instructional and educational purposes only and should not be construed as professional advice. The final authority for campaign finance is the Indiana Election Division of the Secretary of State. Uh, I I think our Treasury team for the 4th District, we're knowledgeable. We'll help look up any questions if we don't know the answer. But the final authority is the Indiana Election Division. And so I want to make sure everybody understands that. We'll try and help you, but the final authority is them. So if we can go to the next slide, Matt. All right. So there are two, and I hope you excuse me. Sometimes I'm going to actually kind of read what we've got here, and then I'll try and fill in with comments. The reason that I'm kind of reading some of it is a lot of this is very important, and it's all information that we have pulled out of the campaign finance manual, and things can be pretty technical. So excuse me when I do read to you, because I know that everybody out there is literate and can read it for themselves. But sometimes if I can say it and then I can add a little comment to it, that's kind of what I'm planning to do tonight. So anyway, hopefully everybody that is going to be a treasurer or is already a treasurer has, oh, I think we just lost it. I lost the screen.
Okay. Hold on. Sorry about that. I thought we were.
There we go. Are we good to go, Matt? Oh,
Uh, yeah. Sorry, I thought we had that. Daggone it.
now I've got a background.
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Sorry about that.
So the Indiana Campaign Finance Manual, it's published every year, and that is the authority that we rely on to get the information we need to file our reports and so on. My suggestion is download it and have it readily available so that you can refer to it at any time. You could print it if you want to, but it is well more than 100 pages. So if you can download it and have it where you can access it at any point, I think you'd do well. All the forms that you need for filing are in the campaign finance manual, along with instructions. The other source is the Indiana Election Division. I'll refer to that as the IED. It has two staff members that are helpful to us. Angie Nussmeyer is the co-director and represents the Democratic Party on the board. And then Abby Taylor actually handles the campaign finance side for the Democratic Party. And I've got her email there. Both are reachable by phone or email, but I suggest email because that documents any question that you have, but it also documents the answer they give you back. Abby Taylor is very responsive. She will, if you email to her, she'll email you back very quickly. Angie Nussmeyer, maybe not so much. I think Angie probably has other duties, and anything that has to do with campaign finance, she kind of pushes down to Abby to handle for her. So at this point, Abby would be your first go-to. And actually, I might mention one of the things that not only myself, but Teresa and Peggy, we are quite willing to answer any questions treasurers have. So feel free to send us an email with your question first, and if we can't answer it, we'll get Abby to join us on trying to come up with an answer. All right, if we can go to the next slide. All right, so let's talk about the different type of levels that we have here. So we'll start off with county office candidates because they have a little different way to register their committee. So these are county offices, and it includes all the way from sheriff to a state convention delegate. So you can take a look at those. If you're running for those offices, those are considered county offices. And you have to file all your reports with the county clerk if you're running for any of those. If we can go to the next slide, Matt. All right, so how do you, and I suspect at this point, people have already done it, but to make your declaration of candidacy, you file a CAN-2, and the purpose of that is to actually get on the ballot. Doesn't start your campaign, we'll talk about that, but it does get you on the ballot. Those must have been filed between January the 7th and February the 6th. So those have already been done at this point, hopefully. Along with filing the CAN-2, you also have to file the CAN-12, which is really a statement of the economic interests. You can find both of those forms on the Indiana Secretary of State's official election forms page. And you, for county offices, you file with the clerk, and for the statewide offices or the General Assembly or Indiana Senate, you'd file with the Indiana Election Division. So if we can go to the next slide. All right, just a word on the CAN-12. It's a statement of economic interest, and it's really, you file that because you have to make sure that there's no financial conflicts of interest. So it is required. Um, and you can do it when you file your declaration of candidacy, but also you would have to file if you get nominated at the convention, if you're filing petitions with the school board or minority party or as an independent candidate, if you become a write-in candidate, or you fill uh, filing early or late ballot vacancies. So if there's a vacancy later on. Uh, Key filing notes. It must accompany the CAN-2 or other qualifying nomination documents, and it's required within 60 days after assuming a vacant local office. So if you're appointed to an office that becomes vacant, you still have to file a CAN-12. And again, you can get that on the Indiana Secretary of State's election forms portal. All right, let's move on. Okay, so you've if you filed as a candidate, you still have to file a statement of organization. You still have to form your party, and that's done for candidates with the CFA-1. The purpose of this form is to create your campaign finance committee. It has nothing to do with getting on the ballot. So you may have already filed with the clerk to run, but if you're going to form your party, you need to file a CFA-1. Okay, you are required to do a CFA-1 if the office you're running for has pays more than $5,000 a year. So that's probably going to be most countywide offices, and probably is not going to be like I don't know what if a town board pays anything at all, or like a township trustee. But anyway, if that pays more than 5,000, you need to file. Or, and this is where most people are going to have to file, if you raise or spend more than $500 as a candidate for a local office. It doesn't take long to spend $500. So my suggestion is that you form your organization, your campaign committee, and you would use the CFA-1 if you're a candidate. You file that with the county clerk for local offices and the Indiana Election Division for the state offices. All right, if we can go to the next slide. Okay, just this is right out of the campaign finance manual. What are the qualifications for a treasurer? Well, first of all, you must be a citizen of the United States. The treasurer may not be the chairman of a committee. However, a candidate can be both the chairperson and their own treasurer. The treasurer must be appointed in writing by the chairperson, and you do that on the CFA-1, the form that we talked about on organizing your committee. The treasurer must accept that appointment, and your signature is proof of that acceptance. Again, that's on the same CFA-1. An individual may be a treasurer for more than one campaign committee unless the person is a candidate, who may then only be the treasurer of their own candidate's committee. I have been treasurer for a PAC and for a county party. So that was legal. I can be a treasurer for as many as I want, as many will have me. The treasurer of a candidates committee may not be a member of the county election board. So I think that makes sense. I might say before, those are the qualifications that you must have according to the state. But I think qualifications, more of a soft approach on the qualifications, is I think you have to have the right kind of person for it. You have to have a treasurer should be somebody that's very comfortable with numbers, very detail oriented, somebody that doesn't mind digging in to things, making sure that they're in compliance. Because basically the treasurer of a campaign is actually the chief financial officer for that. So they need to have a lot of comfort with handling money, and talking about how to do a budget and following the finances of the organization. So that's an important qualification, and I think if you're a candidate, you want to make sure that you find someone that can do that, that has those qualifications. All right. So upon election or appointment, you've got to register with the proper authority. Forms to file. Candidates, we talked about it. Candidates file a CFA1. PACs file CFA2, which is very similar to CFA1. And political parties, such as the Boone County Democratic Party, files a CFA3. And you have to file those with the proper jurisdiction. So county and municipal candidates file with the county clerk. PACs and political parties, and this is important on political parties like a county party, that support candidates beyond county boundaries, file with the Indiana Election Division, the Secretary of State. I didn't really understand that rule when I first became a treasurer. Um, Even though we were supporting some candidates that were running, and this is several years ago, running for the General Assembly, so that our candidate was in Boone County and part of Marion County, part of Hendricks County. Um, we were only filing with the county clerk. So we were in violation of an important rule. So once you start supporting candidates beyond the county roles and people that go across county, you need to make sure you're filing with the Indiana Election Division. And hopefully most county parties know that by now. Took me a while to learn that. All right, if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so you filed now your candidacy, you've got your campaign committee organized, and you've got it filed with the proper authorities. The next thing you need to do is obtain a federal tax ID number. And the reason you need that is you're going to be open, you probably need to open up a bank account. Now, this is easy to get. You can get this online. Uh, the website or the link that you need is irs-taxnumber.org. Make sure that when you do this online, if you just type in, I want to get a tax ID number, you'll get a bunch of ads in there and you'll get some vendors that want to do this for you. But what you really want to do is you want to go straight to the IRS websites. So be very careful that you get onto the proper website because you're going to be giving them some information. So the whole application process can be done online. You complete and submit your tax ID application online. IRS will do a compliance review, and then you'll get your tax ID in your email box as a PDF. Once you get that, make sure you keep that as a permanent record because you're going to need that when you open your bank account as a permanent record for the campaign. So make sure you download that, print it, put it someplace, and save it. All right, if we can go to the next slide, Matt. All right, so here's just another disclaimer, and I'm going to read this one. Personal funds from campaign funds. If a committee accepts contributions or makes expenditures in an amount of more than $200 in a year, then campaign funds must be segregated from and not commingled with any personal funds or members of the committee. In other words, most candidate committees will need to open a separate bank account for campaign purposes. This is very important. You need to, and that's why you need to open up a bank account because it's very easy to spend $200 in a campaign, even for a lesser office. It's not unusual to spend 200. So if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so opening a bank account. I've had to do this several times and I've had good experiences and I've had poorer experiences. So I find that first of all, you probably want to select a bank that you know has had other campaigns as their account holders. Boone County Democrats have been using PNC for many, many years. They've been pretty good to work with, but I know that there's other banks that people have had. So once you kind of determine the bank that you want to use, I would call and make an appointment with the branch manager. And the reason I suggest that is there are a lot of compliance rules when setting up bank accounts for political parties. You have a compliance review that's done, someplace besides in the branch. And so the rules have to be followed very strictly. If you just walk in on a Saturday morning, because that's the first time you have time available, because I'm sure most treasurers probably have full-time jobs, you're not likely to get the branch manager's attention. And as a consequence, you might spin your wheels a bit. So if you can make an appointment with the branch manager, let them know what you're coming in for, then they can make sure that they can walk you through the process. After you make your appointment, here's what you need to bring with you. Both the candidate or the party chair and the treasurer must be present at the same time because they want to see your driver's licenses. They're going to do their own compliance there. So you need to have both people. And when I say candidate or party chair, it's who's on your CFA 1 that needs to be identified. Bring a copy of your CFA 1, or if you're a county party, a CFA 3. Obviously, those need to be signed by the candidate or the chair and the treasurer. You need proof of filing with the clerk or the IED. So if you have filed your CFA 1 with the clerk of the county, what I've always done in the past is I make 2 copies of the CFA 1. I take it to the clerk's office. They stamp both of them as time received and accepted. They keep one, and then you get to take one back with you. And you need to have that because you're going to use that for several other things in the future. So you need to make sure you've got one that has proof that it's been filed. If you filed with the Indiana Election Division, you can get that, you can download your form on the website. And then it has proof of filing on that. Make sure that you take that with you. You'll also need your federal tax ID number. So I would take that notification from the feds with you. And one important thing, an initial contribution to open the account. You need to have some kind of money that you're going to make to deposit to open the account. So sometimes you forget to do that. You bring everything else, but you don't have money to open it. So if we can go to the next slide, Matt. Okay, so while you're at the bank, that's a great time to order checks and deposit slips. The other thing that I think most parties now or campaigns do is you probably also uh, obtain a debit card. A debit card can be very useful. Make sure that it's a debit card and not a credit card. In some cases, what we did with the Boone County Dems is the treasurer was the only one that had the debit card. But in many cases, the party chair or the candidate may wish to also have a card. Uh, there's some pros and cons, and I think it needs to be discussed. One of the things that if you're a treasurer, you are responsible for 100% of the transactions of the campaign. So if somebody else has a debit card, it's a little bit out of your control or immediate control. But on the other hand, if the treasurer is the only one to have a debit card, then they have to handle all the transactions. They've got to go buy candy for the parade. They've got to. So that's a discussion I think that you have to have with the chairman of the committee. The other thing while you're at the bank, I suggest you set up online banking for mobile deposits. You're going to have events where you're going to collect checks or cash. You can at least get the checks deposited immediately right after the event using mobile deposit. It's very convenient. Make sure that you set up mailing addresses for bank notices and statement delivery. Consider having a second person besides the treasurer receive statements because that helps in the review of the bank reconciliations. And it's proof of an asset. It's a good thing to have. All right, if we can go to the next slide. All right. So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the types of contributions that you have out there, donations. Um, a contribution, I'm going to read these because it's important. A contribution is any donation accepted by a candidates committee and made for the purpose of influencing an Indiana election. Keep in mind the word influencing. A contribution includes cash, checks, gifts of property or services, loans, in-kind contributions, and we'll talk more about in-kind contributions, or any other things received by the committee having value. So the two things that I get from this is influencing a campaign and having value. Contributions may be made by an individual, business, profit, nonprofit corporation, labor unions, regular party committees, candidates committees, giving to other committees, or any other type of organization. Uh, I think it's obvious a candidate may also contribute to their own campaign. So if we can go to the next slide, Matt. All right. So I mentioned in-kind contributions, and sometimes that's a little harder concept to get when you first get started as a treasurer. In-kind contributions are those contributions of things or services such as posters, billboards, use of an automobile, anything that has value that are paid by or for another person or entity and then given to the committee or distributed by another for the benefit of reporting committee. An in-kind contribution does not include cash, checks, or promissory notes. An in-kind contribution is reported at fair market value of the goods or services. It's also reported as an expense at the same value of the contribution. I'm going to give you an example of a couple of in-kind contributions that I think almost every campaign gets involved with. So the first one might be an example where the campaign decides that they want to have a postcard mailing, and they get volunteers that say, yeah, I'll write 50 postcards. And many times what happens is the the campaign gives the actual postcards, but the handwritten note is done by the volunteer. And in many cases, after they write their, let's say, their 50 cards, they'll put stamps on them. They'll go to the post office and they'll buy the stamps, and they'd like to make that as a contribution to the campaign. Uh, if that money is not reimbursed to that volunteer, that would be an in-kind contribution. And the way that that would be handled by the treasurer is when the volunteer goes to buy the stamps, let's say they buy 50 stamps and I don't know, what are they, 75 cents each. So let's say the contribution is $35. They would send the receipt from the post office to the treasurer and indicate that they do not want to be reimbursed for it. They want to make an in-kind contribution. The entry that or the way that the treasurer would handle that is they would list that as a contribution from volunteer A for $35. And then they would also record an expense to the campaign for stamps at $35. And the important part to that is it's a non-cash transaction, both on the contribution and on the expense side, which means that it has no effect on the bank account, which is important later on when we start talking about filing our CFA 4. So that's one example. Another example is use of an automobile. So, for example, many times, especially as the campaign really gets close to the end, you have voters that would like to have a yard sign in their yard, for example. And so you get a volunteer that's going to distribute about 25 yard signs throughout the county. And they're going to put a couple hundred miles on their car driving those signs and getting them out there. If you remember, the definition of a contribution is influence and value. When you're out there putting yard signs in yards, that's influencing a political party. So that means that this has to be recorded. So typically what you use is you figure out how many miles the individual drove using the Indian, or I'm sorry, the federal deduction for mileage, which I don't have with me, but it's like 65 cents a mile, something like that. So if they drove 100 miles at 65 cents a mile, they have an in-kind contribution, if they're not reimbursed for their gasoline, of $65. And so what would have to happen is that volunteer, and this is required that they do this because it did influence and there is value. So it does have to be recorded as in kind. They would give the treasurer some kind of log or some kind of written statement in an email that they on these dates they drove so many miles and at 65 cents a mile or whatever agreement they come with. They could come back. Somebody just said oh, that's even better, 72 and a half cents per mile. Uh, so that has to then be recorded. And the way the treasurer would handle that, you've got an in-kind contribution for volunteer B that did all the driving, 72 and a half cents. I'm sorry, $72.50. And then you would have an offsetting expense called mileage for that same dollar amount. So in-kind contributions, you have to think about the contribution side and the offsetting expense
I've
side that
listened to
goes with it.
everything up to this point previously.
All right, if we can go to the next slide. All right, so sources of donation. I think everybody probably has a comfortable feel for what those are, but let's go over them. So cash. You don't see as much cash as we used to, but if you do take cash, you must provide a receipt. And the receipt needs to record the name and address of the donor, the date, and the dollar amount. Many times when I was a treasurer, what I would do is I would also on the receipt write down, for example, were we selling an item? Was it just a general contribution? Maybe just a little note there of what that was for. You're going to get checks. Again, you need to make sure that you record name and address, the dollar amount of the checks. Most checks will already have the name and address. Uh, Deposit all cash and checks just as quickly as you can within a few business days. It's not always convenient to do that because many of the events where you're collecting are at night, but it's just good internal control to get your deposits done as quickly as you can. If you do take cash in at events, I think it's very important that you have two people count the cash. One person, obviously the treasurer, that's going to take possession of the cash, and then somebody else that's confirming what it is, and then make a note that on the date and time, this is the amount of cash that we collected. And that way it gets recorded. Also, Democrats usually sign up to accept Act Blue. You can do that online. It's relatively easy to do. Make sure you've got all your documents that you need, such as your CFA1, your bank account information. I don't know if you need your tax ID number, but I would have it ready with me. And Act Blue can get you set up. Also, I think most campaigns now take credit cards. So you need to find a credit card processor, such as Square. Keep in mind that both ActBlue and credit cards and PayPal, they'll take money in for you, but they're going to charge a processing fee, someplace probably close to 4%, depending on the amount of volume you do. We talked a little bit about in-kind donations. A lot of campaigns sell merchandise or parties, so you need to have that's another source. And then there's also raffles and gaming. A gaming license is required, and they have very strict rules on operations. And I'm not going to go into that. If somebody decides they're going to have a Monte Carlo night or something like that, we probably have to work together on how you would proceed. But you will need a gaming license. If we can go to the next slide, Matt. Okay, there are some limitations on contributions, and those are with corporations and labor organizations. For detail on that, you can read that in the campaign finance manual. And one of the reasons that you need to know what's coming from corporations and labor organizations, we're going to talk a little bit about the CFA4 later on, but contributions are classified separately. So all your donations from individuals, from PACs, labor unions, corporations, and then everybody else, other, are segregated on the CFA4. So if we can go to the next slide. All right, this is something I actually just recently learned. Indiana campaign contribution limits. So labor unions and corporations are the ones you have to watch carefully. And what they are, there's a list of them here. We'll just take one of them as an example. So the limitation for a labor union or corporation is $5,000 per calendar year to all statewide candidates combined, not just if a corporation gives $5,000 to one candidate. It's if they gave money to another candidate or whatever, but they cannot exceed 5,000, no matter how many candidates they give that to. So here's what the problem becomes. So you can see that there's different contribution levels for different organizations. So if your campaign is going to take a contribution from a labor union or a corporation, you have no idea whether they've exceeded that $5,000 or that $2,000 for state senate, because you're blind to it. You only know what they gave you. So I'm going to read this down at the bottom. This is straight out of the campaign finance manual. You cannot independently verify a labor union's aggregate contributions statewide. Instead, Indiana law requires you to rely on the labor union's written certification that the contribution does not cause it to exceed its aggregate annual limits. If you accept the contribution without that certification, your committee can be found in violation, even if the union or the corporation is the one exceeded the limit. I did not know that before. So if you get a contribution from a corporation or a labor union, you need to get them to certify that their contribution does not exceed its aggregate annual limit. So you need to get that piece of paper and keep that, because it's very likely, or shouldn't say likely. You run the risk that if they have exceeded that they could come back to the campaign. So that's kind of an ominous situation that everybody needs to be aware of it. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so we talked about contributions coming in. They're fairly complicated. Expenditures, not quite so much. An expenditure is any payment, transfer, or disbursement of money or things of value for political purposes. All the campaign expenditures are going to be reported on the CFA4 for the period in which the expenditure was made. If a candidate exceeds the candidate's own personal funds expends the candidate's own personal funds for political purposes, the amounts have to be reported as a contribution on the candidate's committee and then as an expense. So it's handled just like a in-kind donation. One thing that you'll see if you spend time looking at the campaign finance manual, all receipts and expenditures must pass through the hands of the treasurer. That's very important. So that's why the treasurer's position is so important, and why the treasurer needs to understand compliance of the campaign finance rules. When you fill out a CFA4, which is what you use to report your expenditures and your donations, on the donation side, there's actually a column for every donation, who accepted it, and that's you, the treasurer. So it's very important to the in your compliance. All right, we can go to the next slide. Debts. I'll go over debts real quick. Basically, on that same form, there's a form, there's a line item on any debts that the campaign has at the end of a period. Debts include but are not limited to monies or items borrowed. So it doesn't always have to be money. It can be items borrowed, credit purchases, credit card accounts, or other unpaid debts. And it's only the outstanding balance at the end of the reporting period. But that does have to, any debts that you have to be reported as debts. However, any payment made to pay off a credit purchase is considered an expenditure, and the vendor or individual must be itemized as such. That's a little complicated. I'm going to give an example. It's very possible that you could have a situation where somebody on the campaign committee needs to go out and purchase something for the campaign. Maybe they're buying candy for the parade, and they don't have the campaign's debit card. They go out, they purchase it, and they use their credit card. And at that point, they give the receipt to the treasurer. The treasurer should then record that, because they're going to write a check to reimburse that person, or they're going to write a check to the credit card company. But the way that should be properly recorded is the original vendor is who the expense goes to. There was a time that I'm not sure I knew that, and I would see you're not going to write down that Visa was the expenditure to. It's ABC Sign Company, as even though you used a credit card to do that, or you reimbursed a volunteer's credit card, you still would record that on your CFA-4 as the original vendor. So hopefully that makes sense. If we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so we've talked about contributions, we've talked about donations and so on, but man, that's a lot of stuff to keep track of. So there's some sophisticated ways to do it, and there's some simple ways to do it. So what we can do here, probably the easiest method if you have a small campaign, is use what I call the bank statement method. That's where you take your bank statement each month and you look at all the items on the statement and you identify them as to were they donations, who were the donators, and so on. And from that, you can actually enter those onto your CFA-4 report. You've got an advantage in that it's free because you just have the bank statement, but you also have disadvantages. If you do that, you don't have any internal reports that you can look at. Donor and vendor addresses are not going to be on the bank statement. You're going to have to keep track of those separately when you report those on the CFA-4. Also, some of the rules, you have to identify any donor or vendor that you receive a donation over $100 in the annual time period. And those have to be reported as individually on the CFA-4 if they exceed $100. The problem is you don't always know when it's going to exceed $100. An example would be you have a donor that makes a $25 a month contribution every month. Well, the first time they make the contribution, they didn't exceed the $100, but by the time they get to the fifth one, they will have exceeded the 100, and they have to then be reported on the CFA-4 individually with name and address. So your bank statement method isn't going to help you with that. And obviously, in-kind donations will not appear on that either. So I would only recommend the bank statement method for very small campaigns that are not going to bring in a lot of money, where you can keep track of everything. Let's go to the next statement. Spreadsheet method. That's a little more sophisticated. Basically, you could use Excel, or you could use Google Sheets, some kind of spreadsheet, and capture all the donation expenditures. And you can also put some additional fields in there, like names and addresses and so on, where you can keep track of data. I don't think you have to be real sophisticated to use a spreadsheet to do that. The advantage to that is if you already own the software, it's free. But then data can be sorted internal reports can be created if you're pretty good at with the spreadsheet. Donor and vendor addresses can then be tracked with the CFA4. And cumulative thresholds, if you sort properly, cumulative thresholds with the CFA4 reporting can be sorted. So you can find out when this donor reaches the $100 or the threshold. So that is one way. If we can go to the next one. All right, so then I think bigger campaigns in county parties tend to use accounting software. Teresa, for example, uses Quicken for Hendricks County. It's recommended for county parties and larger campaigns. The advantages to Quicken, it creates a certain accounting discipline. There's a certain way that you do different things to enter into Quicken. Custom reports can be created to make the CFA4 reporting easier. I know Teresa has created some SOPs on how to get some of those custom reports. I'm sure she would be happy to share some of her background on those. Donor and vendor addresses can be tracked for CFA4 reporting. And it's actually easier to learn, I think, than QuickBooks. The cost is, I think, nominal, $5.99 to $7.99 per month. So I think that's a good way for a good-sized campaign to keep track of their expenses. Or I'm sorry, of all their accounting. If we can go to the next slide. All right, QuickBooks Online. I've been using, I've been in finance and accounting for 40 years, so I've had QuickBooks for a long time. Right now, I think the only way you can get it is QuickBooks Online, but I recommend it for county parties and large campaigns. It's got some of the same advantages that Quicken has. It creates an accounting discipline. Custom reports can be made for internal reporting and CFA4 reporting. You can track your donor and vendor addresses. They're very easy to track and pull out. And your cumulative thresholds for donations and expenditures are pretty easy to track. The big disadvantage is, number one, is the cost, $39 per month. So it's going to be, $500 or more per year to use QuickBooks. And I think a certain amount of bookkeeping skills are required. Some of the reports that I use when I am tracking things to put into the CFA4 to make my life a little easier require making some journal entries and some things that maybe most people don't do on a daily basis. So there is a certain amount of bookkeeping skill required. Back to the cost. I think I had QuickBooks on my desktop, so I never had to worry about a month. Once I bought it, I never had to worry about a monthly fee, and I've had it for more than 10 years. But when I left the Treasury and came Tanya took over on the Treasury for Boone County Dems, they had to go online because that was the only way they could do it. And we transferred data because you can keep all the data from day one. But that $500, what they did is they got somebody to actually donate and pledge to make those monthly payments as part of a donation. So that is one way that you could do it because you're going to pay those monthly, and the donor can make that a sustaining monthly donation. So one way to attack it. All right, next slide. All right, so now we've established a way to keep track of all of our transactions. The big thing now is how do we get those into our reports that we need to do for the county clerk or for the IED. The Indiana Campaign Finance Manual contains a calendar of all the due dates of all the campaign finance reports. My suggestion is make sure you print this calendar and have it, you can hang it prominently, but I keep it close to the checkbook. As I'm writing checks for the organization, I can look at those dates pretty quickly. They'll come in mind of when they're going to be due. Late filing is not excused, and there are daily fines for failure to file. A minute past the due date and time is an infraction. I learned that one also the hard way. I was quite aware the very first time I had to file a CFA 4, at that time we were filing with the county. I knew it was due on a certain Friday. It went right over my head that it was due at noon. And I literally decided I got my report done that morning, and I was going to have lunch in Lebanon. So I thought I'll just take it in when I go into lunch. And I showed up at the clerk's office at 12:30. So in my mind, I'm not very late, and I didn't even realize I was late. But when I checked in, the clerk jumped up from her desk way back in the corner and ran up to let me know that I was in violation, and that if you're 1 minute past noon, that there could be a $50 fine. In this case, they didn't fine me. They still logged it in as late because they timestamp it. But I think the political atmosphere has changed. I would not trust that a clerk of the other party would just say, "Hey, that's okay. You're late. Don't worry about it." I suspect they would try and not so much that they want the $50, but they want to embarrass you, embarrass the party. So don't embarrass the party or your campaign. Make sure you file on time. And noon is very strict. A minute past is late. So let's talk about the CFA 4. I've been mentioning it as we've been going along. The CFA 4 is a report of receipts and expenditures of a political party, a committee. The treasurer must file 3 CFA 4 reports, a pre-primary, a pre-election, and an annual for every calendar year in which a candidate appears on an election ballot for office. So in that sentence, if a candidate appears on an election ballot, then you're going to have to file 3 different reports. If you take 2025, there were no elections that year. So treasurers only had to file their annual report. If the candidate's name does not appear on the ballot in an election held in that calendar year, then the candidates committee is only required to file an annual report. So you may have a candidate or a candidate committee that was formed, and later on the candidate, let's say they didn't win office, but they plan on running again, whether it's in 2 years, 4 years, whatever. They may keep their campaign open, but on the year that they're not running again, if they're not on the ballot, they don't have to file a pre-primary or a pre-election report. They only have to file an annual. When filing your campaign reports, make sure that you're obviously using the currently approved forms, because if you use an old one, it could be defective and you could be out of compliance. You can get current versions of the campaign finance forms or at this link, campaignfinance.in.gov. Additionally, county election officials have those forms available for you. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so the pre-primary report, I'm not going to read everything that's on there, but it basically, the reporting period is from January the 1st to this year till April the 10th. And if you formed your, that reporting period, if you formed your committee sometime after January 1st, then your reporting period would be from the time you formed your committee. So it could be less than January. That is going to be due on April the 17th by noon. So that's going to be the very first report treasurers are going to have to fill out. So if you've registered your campaign, you are going to have to file the pre-primary report. Next slide. Pre-election report is very similar to the pre-primary, except now we're talking about the reporting period being from April 11th to October the 9th, and that will be due on 10/16. 26th by noon. So the other report that you will have to file no matter what is your annual report. It's due 15 days after the end of the calendar year. I think this year it would be, your reporting period would be from October the 10th to December 31st, and it will be due on January the 20th of 2027. So one thing I'd have to say about the reports and those due dates, if you notice, you get, I think it's about 7 days to file your report. If you have not done anything towards getting your reports ready, you can be in a mad scramble trying to put everything together at the last minute, and you could be subject to error. We'll talk about it a little later on, but my suggestion always is on a monthly basis, you should be filling out your CFA4 report. That way, you have a very good chance of making sure you get everything done by the end of the year, or by the end of the due date for that period. All right, I'm going to take a drink of water here for a minute. Teresa just gave me a reminder here. I've been talking about candidates and their parties. Their due dates on the annual report is January the 20th, coming up this next year. But if you're a treasurer for a political party, it's not due really, I think, until probably March. So you get more time on that. But candidates, who I expect most of the people on this are treasurers for candidates, it's going to be January the 20th. All right, next slide. There also are two other reports or times that you have to file a report. There's an outgoing treasurer's report. So basically, if you have a vacancy in the committee, if the treasurer leaves, resigns, doesn't seem to be working out very well, then there's an outgoing treasurer's report. That basically is going to be all the transactions that took place until his last day. And then at the same time, we'll assume that if the campaign is going to continue, that a new treasurer is going to be appointed. You'll fill out a new CFA1 listing the new treasurer, and then they will be responsible from the day after the last treasurer did their report. The other thing that's important is if you disband the committee, then you have to do a final report within 30 days after the committee disbands. And this is pretty important. And it's going to report all the transactions, everything until the last day of the campaign. A candidates committee is not automatically disbanded after an election if the candidate is defeated for office. So if you have somebody that's running and in November they don't get elected, their committee is still open. They're still expected to file their reports according to the schedule, and failure to file can lead to a fine. I'm quite aware of cases where people have not followed that rule and fined the maximum. So it's very important that if you decide that this campaign is over, I'm never going to run again, I'm going to close my campaign, you got to do it in the professional way. And you can do that through the CFA4. You just file a final report, and then that's it. All right, next slide, please. We talked, so these are just, I'm just going to go over some helpful hints. We might backtrack a bit. So select your bookkeeping method for keeping track of all your receipts and expenditures. We talked about those. Reconcile your bookkeeping ledger balance to the bank balance on a monthly basis. This is very important. That's how you can make sure that you're accounting for all the transactions that have happened, your donations and your expenditures. And I think a member of the campaign executive team should review that bank reconciliation with the treasurer. This isn't because we think the treasurer is incompetent or stealing or whatever. It's just good internal control to have somebody else reviewing the treasurer's bank statements. And it really ought to be somebody on the executive team of the campaign or the party. And then at the same time, if you enter all your receipts and expenditures into the CFA 4 on a monthly basis, the way that form works, you come down to an ending bank balance. You need to reconcile that also with the bank statement. Again, I would do that monthly because that way you don't get behind in your filings and your reporting. Make sure that also you back up all your data, maintain your source documents. I think you have to be ready for an audit or review of the campaign finances at any time. Special considerations, we talked a little bit about raffles and charity gaming fundraisers. You need to have a license for that. One thing that has come up a couple of times with the Boone County Dems, probably in other county parties, alcohol at events. If you're hosting a event and you're going to have alcohol, you have to register, you have to get a license for that from the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission, unless you do it at like a bar or a restaurant or someplace that already has the license. But if you just go to a venue that does not have a license, then you do need to get permission from the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission. All right. Yeah, the other thing that I think is helpful, we talked about doing bank reconciliations monthly, but the other thing you should look at is if your campaign is large enough or your county party, you should probably prepare a budget, and you need to reconcile that budget. And what I mean by that is make sure that you establish a budget for your receipts and expenditures. So you might have a top line budget. In this campaign, we want to raise $40,000 if we're going to get elected as the clerk of the court. That's the amount we need. We may have a couple of events or projects that we may have a separate budget for. You're going to have some fixed costs such as liability insurance, and you're going to have recurring monthly expenditures. Some of those are, I think, once you get a campaign going, you start finding vendors that do email for you. You start, you maybe have QuickBooks or Quicken where you have a monthly charge. Anything where there's a recurring monthly expenditure, make sure you work that into the budget. And then the key to that is not only do you have a budget, but you want to compare that budget to actual. And when you do that, make sure that you can understand all your variances of the budget. Why did we not raise as much money as we thought we did? Did we overestimate? Did not as many people show up? I mean, there's lots of things. If you're going to have a budget, you need to know why it worked for you or why it didn't, and you can learn from that. All right, next slide, please. This is important. Maintain records of all your donors. Any donor that contributes above a threshold must be itemized individually on the CFA 4. Again, that's $100 for campaigns and PACs, and it's $200 for regular parties. And these are cumulative thresholds throughout the year. You need to make sure you have the name, address, and if your donor donates more than $1,000, you need the occupation for the donor. Sometimes that's a little hard to get. If your donation comes from ActBlue gathers all that information for you, including occupation. But if you're just getting a check from someone, sometimes it's a little difficult to ask them, hey, what's your occupation? However, it is required on the CFA 4 if it's over 1,000. So you just have to let them know, I need this for reporting purposes. Any donor that does not exceed the thresholds may be reported as an unitemized donor, and that does not have to appear with all that donor information on the CFA4. So I think you'll find that many of your donors do not exceed the $100. The problem is you don't know that until they actually exceed the 100. So you still have to kind of keep track of everything. Next slide, please. Okay, so I know there's some people that wanted to know a little bit more about how you file online. Um, I got this information from Teresa. She created a standard operating procedure for online filing of the CFA4. In my experience, I've always used the CFA4 online, but I did not go through Excel. I entered every transaction individually and manually. Teresa created a SOP for doing that using Excel, and I think it's pretty helpful. I'm going to try and explain it as best I can. This might be one of those that if you have further questions, that you contact Teresa, and maybe Teresa, you can give your email out. Um, anyway, I think we missed can we go back to the last slide? Yeah. So there's a couple things that you need to do on the CFA4 if you're going to be filing online or if you want to use the system. Number one, you need to know your campaign finance file number, and you'll need a user login and password. Well, you get those if you're a campaign and you file your CFA 1 with the IED, they will assign you a finance when they approve you. They'll assign you a finance file number, and they'll send you an email where you can create a user login and a password. So that will then give you access to the system. I dug a little deeper, and because I've never I've always had a campaign finance number because I was filed and had to file with IED. But you can also get a user login and password, even if you're not registered with the state. They'll allow you to use the system to complete your CFA4. And you can do that by contacting Abby Taylor, and she's very quick on let her know that you're filing with the county clerk, but you would like to use the campaign system online to do your CFA4, and she'll get the credentials set up for you. So what you'll in effect be doing if you're not registered with the IED, you'll log in, you'll put all your numbers into the CFA4, and then you can print out your CFA4 and take that, sign it, take it to the county clerk. You will not upload it into the system because you're not registered in that. All right, now we're ready for the next slide. Okay, so this is the string using the online filing, using Excel. And I'm going to show you a couple of slides that are going to be really hard to look, but prepare your workbook using the format defined in the publication electronic data upload. You'll see that on the campaign finance online sheet. And then the link is Indiana Campaign Finance Resources Publications. I'll show you what that might look like on the next slide. I think it is. Yeah. So in the Indiana Campaign Finance Online, this is one of the menus that's on there. But the one that you want to use if you want to use an Excel spreadsheet that works is the EDI Excel template. And you click on that, and if you'll go to the next slide, Matt. Okay, I have no idea whether people can read this or not. Oh, there we go. But this is what that looks like. So you fill in the fields that are up there at the top, and it's basically I think it comes back to the file names and so on. Can you go to the bottom of that? Yeah, so you've got several tabs. One is the control tab, and the information that you need for upload is up at the top of that. Then you have another tab that's for contributions, another tab for expenditures, the debt, and some of the other information. So that's what you're going to be filling out each of those tabs before you upload. And then if you can go to the next slide. And then that's what the information is going to look like. You're going to have the name, address, information. There's the occupation that we talked about. And you're going to be filling out that Excel spreadsheet. As I mentioned earlier, I've never used this. So hopefully Teresa could guide you through it if you decide to do that, to use the Excel upload. I think Teresa has said that it's easier for her to do that on Excel than it is to actually go into the CFA4 online and enter things in there, because you have to be very careful as you type things into the CFA4.
That's it. I've already got all the information in a spreadsheet. It just makes for very careful copying and pasting.
Very good. All right, we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so then once you fill out those that spreadsheet, to upload your workbook, log into the Indiana Campaign Finance Online. Across the top of the screen, click on the tab Administration, and we're going to show that in a minute. And then click on Import Data. All the information, since you're going to be able to get this file, I won't go over everything on it, but if you'll go to the next slide, Matt, there's that back in the corner next to that portrait of Diego. It says Administration. That's what you're going to click on to start the upload process. And by the way, that's what the online filing looks like. You can see that I did a quick screenshot where I was doing something for the 4th District. So it's got my name and the organization that I'm doing that with. So yeah. So at that point, this is right just while we're looking at that screenshot, it just has information on what our bank balance was at the end of the year. At this point, I told you you should do it every month. I don't have any of my contributions or expenditures in there, but anyway, that's kind of what you're working with when you're using the CFA4. All right, we can go to the next slide. And then this talks about the view import history function, enables you to view the transactions that were accepted or rejected. If they're rejected, you can make corrections and you can repeat step 4 and update your files. Next. Okay, so just a couple of quick links and so on for the future. Quick links to Indiana Campaign Finance Online. You can see it down at the bottom, campaignfinance.in, so on and so forth. In order to use the ICFO, you do need a username and PIN that you get from the IED. Campaigns and committees registered with the county clerk's office. If you want to just use the forms without uploading into the state, you can get to what you need through that bottom link there. All right. And I think that might be the last slide. Oh, no, one more. So just kind of as we wrap up here, refer to the campaign finance manual frequently. Contact me by email if you have any questions after you've referred to the CFM. There's the email that you can contact me with. And again, rather than call me, it's better if you email me. It's easier for me to respond to it. It can also gives me a chance to confer with Teresa if we need to put our heads together on any answers for you. If we need to, we can talk to Abby Taylor. And I'm going to read the disclaimer one more time. I'm a careful person. The information in this presentation was for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as professional advice. The final authority for campaign finance is the Indiana Election Division of the Secretary of State. However, I think between Teresa and I, we put this presentation together and we think everything we've got in it is factual. So I think that's it, Matt.
Great. We have some questions, so I want to stop sharing and I will bring up the chat and we'll start with some questions. First question, if a candidate is running for local county office, is it legal to act as a treasurer for a state candidate?
A treasurer can be a treasurer for more than just one organization. So he could be for the county and he could also be a treasurer.
Oh, this is someone who's going to run for office. They're going to run for, let's say, county commissioner, just to make up an office. Can they then be the treasurer for someone running for a state office?
No, because they can't no, they can't be a treasurer in they can be a treasurer in more than one organization, but they can't also be a campaign leader in another one if they're the treasurer.
Yeah, they can be a treasurer of their own organization.
But they can't be someone else's and be a
Mm.
candidate. Okay.
Right.
So that ties into that next question about
Yeah.
one spouse is a candidate and the other, both spouses are a candidate and they wanted to be treasurer of each other's campaign. And that's telling me no, they cannot.
Yeah. Right.
There's one here about 500 business cards is 170. It's a reference for how quickly you can get to 200. You can get to $200 very quickly. $170 for 500 business cards is not a good price, though. Um,
Yeah, I didn't go with them. That was just
yeah,
a reference.
yeah,
But it's a good example
yeah, it
because
is.
a small campaign may say, well, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of money, but a few yard signs and some business cards and a couple of brochures to pass out,
Yeah,
and you're going to hit 200 very quickly.
yeah. And there are some options online where you can get a union bug on a business card. So, I mean, it's nice to shop local whenever possible, but campaigns run on tight budgets. Do we need to report a donation at the net after proceeding at processing fees, or do we report the gross and processing fee as an expense? So when
Uh,
you get $100 from Act Blue, do you report the donation as a $100 donation and then a $2.50 processing fee, or do you report the donation as $97.50?
you report it as $100 donation from the donor, and then you have an expense for the processing fee.
Okay.
And
Is the fine?
whether
Go ahead.
that's Act Blue or whether it's credit card,
Or whoever.
PayPal, Venmo,
Yeah.
they're all the same.
Is the final disband report populated into the campaign finance reporting portal after written notice is given to the election division, or is there a way to generate that report yourself? Also, the manual is unclear how to submit written notice that the committee is closing. Is that an email to the Secretary of State's office?
No, it's actually on the final CFA4. There's a box that you check that says final disbanding. So it's fairly easy to do. When you're ready to disband, check the box, and that would take care of it.
Okay.
And that's the same with the outgoing treasurer. There's a box to mark that.
This last question, I think we kind of got answered thanks to Teresa and a few other people. Okay, if you file a paper file, do you have to file the paper to close a committee? Yeah, it's still going to be a box, I think, on that CFA4 form. So even if you
Right.
file it by paper, you would check, yes, this is a
Right.
final disband.
Yeah. So that box, if you're filing with the clerk, you would take your final CFA4, you make sure that box is checked. You'd give that to the clerk. and that will end that. If you're doing it through the state, um, when you file electronically, the same box is there that you mark electronically, and that filing will disband you.
So you can file. So we had a follow-up. Can you file them electronically? I don't know about filing. I don't know that the Excel method you would be able to do a disband. I will say I have a Mac. I use Preview. I've always just downloaded because I'm a dinosaur. I've always just downloaded the CFA form and used Preview, which is Mac's Preview PDF editor, to plug all that information in. Then I've just emailed the CFA4 to Abby and Angie. If you have Acrobat Pro, Acrobat Standard, any PDF editor, you would be able to basically fill that form out, check that box, and then email it to them, and that would essentially close the account. Otherwise, I think you would have to probably talk to Abby, and she could tell you how to close an account with other methods.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any other way other than checking the box on the CFA4, but um,
Someone said that they've emailed Abby in the past and let her know that it was a disband. So
I think that could work because I think Abby is very responsive to us as Democrats,
Mhm.
yeah.
and I think she's helped us sometimes. I know that there's a couple of things I've taken to her, and I would have had a much more ominous process that I had to follow, and she says, "Nope, I can help you with that," and she found ways to shortcut a few things. So she is an ally and a person that and a resource that we want to use whenever we can, very respectfully too.
So for those who aren't aware, the way the Indiana election division is structured is that it's kind of like Noah's Ark. There's two of everything. There's a Republican director or co-director, and then we have Angie, the Democratic co-director. There's a Republican finance person, and we have Abby, who's our Democratic finance person. And every position down the line, Matthew Kovichar is our lawyer. They have a lawyer. So we on the IED, there almost always at some position there will be a Democrat that we can reach out to who is there to not only advise us but represent us on the IED. So they are good resources that, like Tim said, we don't want to overuse, but they are very helpful and will provide us with good counsel.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was our last question. And so with that, I want to thank everyone for attending. I really want to thank Tim and Teresa for their work. This is the second presentation we've done now on being a treasurer, and they've both been really, really helpful in getting this done. And I think it's been a great
I've
value.
actually
I
done.
know I've had people reach out to me. What was that, Alan?
I was saying I had a question
Oh,
to
yeah,
in the
sure.
chat. Are we allowed to reimburse ourselves for mileage? Like if I have to drive up to Indy, that's 110 miles round trip for me. Um, so I don't know, should I be tracking my own mileage?
Are as a candidate or as a
Yeah, because
volunteer?
right now I'm candidate treasurer, chairman, all in one.
Yeah,
Um,
because well, it depends on what you're driving for. If it's influencing the election, if you're presenting yourself to a group or whatever, then clearly you should record that as
okay,
a donation. You're
so
to
like
yourself.
driving up to Indy to file probably wouldn't count,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
driving
Well,
down
no,
to,
I think it would because filing would, that's
well, yeah, I guess
It's in
adding a
support of a
candidate influences
campaign.
the election.
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So attending meetings, certainly would fall into that category.
okay,
And I think somebody gave me maybe Matt gave us the standard. So 72.5 cents, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly, for um, I think that's an important thing to record. I don't know that in the past people paid much attention to doing that because you don't think about it. but it clearly is a donation with the influence and the value. Um, I think the other thing too is it does make your contributions look larger. I don't think artificially, but I think sometimes, we look to we want to show people that we have donations coming in, we have contributions coming in, and if you can record some mileage, I think that's helpful. And then you
Yeah,
think about some of the other things that maybe you're doing in kind that you just go, well, it doesn't matter. I think stamps for postcard campaigns was things that people just said, hey, I'll just buy the stamps myself. End of story. But they really should be recorded.
yeah. I'm in a pretty geographically large district just because I've got, I think, 17 townships, and four of them have less than 1,000 people. So like I to go to the county meetings for one of the counties that I'm touching, that's a 75-mile round trip.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's
That you should record that.
it's stacking up quick. I think I've already got 500 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you should
Okay.
absolutely. I,
yeah.
I I'm gonna say something that's gonna make Tim uncomfortable, but my wife's a school teacher and she loves, and not just her, lots of teachers love to say you can make anything fit the standards. You can probably make a lot of things fit in support of a campaign. So, I mean, don't be,
Absolutely.
uh, too obvious about it, but I mean, most things you do will be in support of your campaign. Becky, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I've been putting questions in the chat and I thought, well, I
Yeah.
can talk. Along that line,
Yeah.
I mean, as far because that would be considered a loan, right? Is there a difference in how you file a
So that would
contribution
be
as a loan and a reimbursable expense? Is there a difference in how you file that?
Give me an example. I may have missed
Well,
the first part.
let's, let's say a candidate fronted the money to get a post office box, to buy a post office box.
That's
Okay,
a loan.
that's a loan. But a candidate that spent money on gas, that's a loan too, then, right?
it's
Even
an
though
in
it's
kind.
no, an in
Yeah.
kind means
If
that
they're
you're not gonna get money back for it, right?
Okay, so let's go back to the post office box. So the candidate or a volunteer or somebody that's outside the campaign gets the post office box and asks to be reimbursed. So what would happen is let's say the volunteer says, "Hey, I just spent $200 for the post office box, uh, and they want to be reimbursed for it." Then the treasurer is going to write a check to volunteer A, but they would record that transaction. The vendor is actually the post office. So there's a little, seems like a disconnect there, but that's part of the transparency. I had to really read that one carefully because I wanted to be sure that I understood that. Uh, then if they open the post office box and they don't need to be reimbursed, they just want to do that, that would become an in-kind contribution. So, you're you might be where the transparency comes in and why transparency is one of the big principles on campaign finance is if you had people go out and do different expenses, but the treasurer is writing the check to John Doe all the time, there's no transparency there. You don't know what's being spent and so on. So it's always back to the original vendor. So the post office would be listed as the vendor, even though the check went to John Doe.
So how do you so then if it's the vendor is the gas station, I mean, how do you enter that differently? I guess is
Well,
Well,
my question.
if we're talking on driving, here's the way I would look at it. Number one, you're never going to get complete reimbursement for your car expenses because you got mechanical, you got all these different things. So a standard mileage deduction is the best way to go with that. So then you don't have to worry about uh, you're basically it's always going to be in kind if you're using your vehicle unless the treasurer reimburses you at that standard mileage rate. So let's just take an example. I think it's similar to what I said earlier. So volunteer A is going to help put signs out throughout the county, and they drive 100 miles. They would let the treasurer know that I just drove 100 miles and I'm going to charge $72.50 for mileage on that. And they can ask for reimbursement. And at that point, if they ask for reimbursement, oh, that's a great question. Who's the
Yeah,
original
because if
vendor?
it's in kind, doesn't that assume if you enter it
If
as
it's
in kind, it
if it's
assumes
in
they're not going to
kind,
get
then
money back,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Either
If
way,
it's
the
in kind,
payee is the volunteer.
In that scenario, the payee is the volunteer. The better question, I suppose, is that
I think that's right.
if let's
I
say
think
Alan, the candidate, has a debit card and pays or well, if let's say Alan, the candidate, drives Indianapolis back, fills up his car, and he turns in a $50 receipt to his treasurer, how will you record that? You know, the
so.
receipt is to Speedway
My
Gas.
my understanding on that is you can either get gas or mileage. You can't get both.
Well, right, right. In that
Right.
case, you
Correct.
wouldn't
So
be claiming mileage. You'd just be saying,
so
"Here's a receipt for $50 worth of gas."
like an example, when I drove up to file at the state office, it was right at 110 miles round trip, and I had a $20 parking slip. So I would submit 110 miles at the rate, and then the $20 parking slip separately.
Yeah, because you got two different vendors there.
Okay.
While we were talking, I think I would say here's the way I would look at it. We're trying to figure out who's the vendor on the mileage expense side of it. And I think that's the individual that did the driving. Um, because they're really, even if they don't ask for even if they don't want to be reimbursed, when you would record that transaction, you record it because you're either paying John Doe or John Doe's donated that, but they are the vendor. It's their car, it's their time and mileage
Right.
that you're reimbursing. So that's the way I would record that. I hadn't
So
thought
would you
about it.
record an in-kind contribution, an in-kind expenditure, and a regular expenditure? I mean, you
It's
have
an
to have
it's an
three because
in-kind contribution versus an offsetting expense.
Correct. Correct.
okay.
The
But
expense really doesn't become, I know it starts to get
It's
technical, and that's
very,
why
yeah. I
Treasury
mean,
is tough because it
it's
has to be technical.
important because it's a common thing
if
and
you look,
people should get their mileage, get
yeah, if you
reimbursed
think
for
of
They
it like
should.
your check register, that in-kind contribution is like making would be entered as a deposit, but then you'd enter an offsetting transaction that is an expense, so it zeroes out.
Right.
Mileage to me is gets a little muddy, but if you think about a volunteer going and buying $25 worth of candy for the parade, and they come to you with a receipt and they say, "This is my in-kind contribution," you enter that offsetting expense. If they say, "Here's a receipt, I want reimbursed," it is an expense, period.
Right.
But you still have to enter, in that case, with the candy, you have to put in in-kind contribution,
No,
an
because it wasn't
in-kind.
in kind. If they say, "I want reimbursed for this," that's an expense, period, because you're
Right.
writing a check to them.
There's
I
no
I
revenue part
understand.
that goes with that.
Yes, I understand.
It's just an
Okay.
expense.
Okay, we have two more questions. I'm going to ask the easy one first. Are in-kind contributions added to the cumulative monetary donations from the same individual? Like if someone makes $1,000 worth of
Yes.
in-kind donations, we need to track that and then
Yes,
occupation.
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
they would be reported on the CFA
Yeah.
income
Yeah.
contributions.
So this one is okay. The next question, would mileage expenses be better to get campaign reimbursement or to file on your personal taxes? The volunteer rate from the IRS is lower than
It,
the federal reimbursement rate.
Is the
that's
volunteer
correct.
rate only
It's more
available for 501(c)(3)s?
Ooh, I don't
Yeah.
know that answer.
We're not.
It's not
Right.
tax deductible.
Yeah, political
Yeah.
campaigns
Yeah,
aren't.
our contributions are not deductible.
So some of the people in this call are parts of 501c3s, but political parties and political campaigns are not. To qualify as a 501c3, I think you have to be a social welfare group. So,
And you have to be approved by IRS. So if you
yeah.
don't have an IRS certificate for that.
So that is the last question, unless anyone has, I'm going to call this is your last chance.
Okay, I hate to
I have.
belabor this, but I just want to make sure I understand. So on that mileage, you're just going to enter an expense, um, a
Yep.
contribution and an expense,
An
If
right?
in-kind
Because
contribution.
and the
yeah,
person is the candidate. The person is the one that used their personal car.
right.
It's a contribution by that person. The
Mhm.
Yep,
expense is paid to that person. So then you have it cancels each other out. Okay,
correct.
Yeah,
And
got
you
it.
do
I
need
think
to
you might.
record it specifically as an in-kind contribution versus a regular contribution because it does have to be indicated separately on the CFA 4 that it was
You
in
mean for
kind.
gas mileage? Gas mileage?
If it's
Oh,
an in-kind contribution,
right.
Yeah,
yeah,
But
the
if they want
contributions have
reimbursed,
absolutely
you just
that's
have
a
two
regular
entries.
expense.
You have,
No,
right,
one entry if you're doing a reimbursement. If they want
That
reimbursed, all you're doing is writing them a check.
right.
got it. And then there's always notes in there that you're explaining what you did
Right.
it for. There's a purpose, and I want to point that out so you can make it crystal clear. Okay, I understand what you're saying. There is
yeah,
one entry. It's an expenditure to the candidate or whoever it is.
Whoever,
And in the
yeah,
purpose, you're going to write this was for mileage for whatever.
in the
Because if they
memo.
turn in their receipt, they're going to say, I went to some event, whatever, for my campaigning. They're going to tell you that in their memo or whatever they gave you. And then you will be very clear on why you gave them that money, that it was relevant to the campaign.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Got it. I was making it way too difficult there, but
yeah.
I
I
think
think
it's
you're
an
getting hung
important thing
up
to know.
on yourself, and then there's the business entity for the campaign, and then there's like your own expenses. It took me a little while to like kind of wrap my head around
And just so
like
long as you make it
I
perfectly
am.
clear, so you're
Yeah,
transparent about why you paid that candidate what you paid them. Just make
yeah,
it clear. You've got plenty of room to type in there. I'll tell you
yeah.
that. Your note and your purpose. Okay.
I'm sorry to bother folks, but I was screwed up by the time difference. I'm up here in the weird part of the state, and I tuned in late to the show. Is it possible for someone to send me the PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah.
My
Absolutely.
email is in the. Uh,
Yeah. Earlier, I gave an email address that you can send, and everybody that responds and asks for it. Um, I'll, I don't think I can tell you what it is if you want to jot it
Well,
down.
Tim, I
yeah,
will tomorrow I will send a link to everyone to the presentation because we will upload this to the district's YouTube channel. So I will send a link to that presentation. I will also include the PowerPoint slides in that email so that you have both.
Oh,
yeah,
perfect.
thank you.
All right.
Okay, last chance. Thank you all for being here. Great conversation. Again, I want to thank Tim and Teresa. Um, their work has been invaluable. I think it's really helpful because this is the really tricky part of politics. My part of it, you could probably train your cat to do what I do, but Tim and Teresa do a really hard job really well. So thank you to both of them.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.
All
Take care.
right.
Good
Good
night.
night.